What's poppin', people? It's Dante, currently photographing this very early morning here in Philadelphia. I absolutely love coming out at this time for some reason, around dawn. Yeah, it just seems to be the most peaceful time to go for a walk. I just came from the Schuylkill River Trail, and instead of visiting the location that I typically do on top of the cliff, I'm actually walking this way for some reason, as I saw the light here. And I don't know, there's something about light. I suppose even artificial light draws me in. You know, considering photography, we wield light as our medium. Yeah, so when it's completely pitch black and dark, maybe these artificial lights can be something intriguing to photograph. And I oftentimes see cars come through this tunnel. I'm not seeing any come right now, but essentially I'm just standing here waiting for a car to visit this tunnel and hopefully capture the lights coming from the car. I think actually using artificial light can be beneficial, especially using black and white. So we're gonna try something here. I'm gonna try to frame this tunnel on the left. Maybe you can see on the GoPro, and then bring some of the sidewalk on the right hand side. Who knows, I'm just playing here. Ooh. Yeah, the light of the cars are very striking because of the contrast of black and white, especially in low light conditions like this. You know, imagine if I could get a car there and a car there, you know, like maybe there's something here, you know, maybe there's something I can play with when it comes to artificial light. Maybe the right hand side of the frame isn't necessary. I just thought it would be interesting to include in a vertical frame. I could also try or in a horizontal frame rather. I could also try horizontal or vertical. Keep mixing up those words, but I think the greatest joy of street photography specifically is how limitless it really is. You know, there are certain rules or guidelines that we typically follow, right? Don't pose their subjects, photograph candidly, you know, don't alter anything, right? Don't remove things in Photoshop, you know, these kind of like basic rules or whatevs. And yeah, that all makes sense. But I think when it comes to subject matter and it comes to the things that we photograph, I think that you can evoke the ethos of street photography within the mundane, right? For me, that's the name of the game. You know, the medium of photography is light itself, and then the medium of street photography becomes the mundane, the everyday, the overlooked, right? Those simple, small moments of a car passing through a tunnel, you know, where the street photographer essentially becomes the ultimate flaneur in their hometown, where we are merely bystanders observing technology, right? Observing people, observing humanity, observing life as it is. And I think that we can evoke the ethos, the aesthetics, the philosophy of street photography while photographing subject matter that may seem like it's not your classic street shot, right? Like automobiles, for instance. You know, I find that automobiles are actually really interesting to photograph as we use them in our lives here in cities very frequently. And I'm fucking really dumb and like to jaywalk. Yeah, we are not merely bystanders, but we're active participants in the streets as well, which means that when we're photographing, while it's important to remain sort of within this sort of candid snapshot approach, I actually believe that the closer you become to other people emotionally and physically, the better your photographs will be. And sometimes when you're photographing on the streets, it's actually wise to engage with the scene. It's a wise tool to have in your bag, right? Where while on the street, don't just be a bystander or a fly on the wall, but engage with people, you know, say hi to strangers and your neighbors, right? You can make conversations and chat with people and actually ask for permission to make photographs without making a scene or constructing a scene. And what that means is, when you see something interesting going on if the people within your frame become aware that you're making photographs, I think that this is okay. I think that you can still maintain the ethos of street photography while asking for permission to make photographs, where by engaging with other people, you can then become a fly on the wall in scenes that you otherwise wouldn't have permission to photograph. You can get closer, you can engage with life in a new way that isn't you just walking around snapshotting people walking by. But I think the real main point that I'm trying to make is that anything that you see, like anything that your mind can even practically imagine, you can manifest within reality, candidly, spontaneously on the streets, you know, where everything is just outside your window, and you just have to go and see the world and position yourself on the front lines of life. And when you engage with other people, when you go out there with your camera openly and honestly, and you have your camera with you, you're merely just treating it as this excuse for you to go out there and see the world. You're treating your camera as this key that can actually unlock physical doors as much as they metaphorically unlock these new experiences. Throughout my journey, by asking for permission, by engaging with other people, whether I'm in a new country or even in my hometown, you know, I've been invited into churches, I've slept on people's floors, I've been invited to dance and sing and drink tea and coffee and share meals with people. You know, there's something about photography that unlocks the door of life. You know, it's a very special medium because it's embodied within reality. And when we're photographing life as it is, not only are we documenting reality in its most raw and authentic form as street photographers, but I believe that we are then extracting from it and abstracting it, giving our own unique vision. But I believe that our unique vision, it's only going to become realized through repetition, through daily practice, and through seeing more, right? The more that you see within the world. When I take a different path, I'm always nervous. It's like, am I gonna get killed? Ooh, look at the way the light glimmers here. Yeah, it's like, the more that you walk, the more that you will see within the world, and the more that you see, the more that you photograph, and ultimately the more photographs you make, the more your vision will become clear, right? And I think that's our goal, is to see clearly. You know, it's like I photograph to see. And the question that I ask myself is, what will reality manifest to be in the photograph that I make? You know, where I really do just photograph to see. And I think that that philosophy or idea can unlock this like abundant sort of flow state of production within the street photographer. And I think this is something that we need to tap into, because I think that street photography becomes limiting when we set all of these different guides or beliefs, rules, but to actually learn them, understand them, and then break them or reinterpret them, and to understand that you can get out there with your camera and make anything happen. It's such a liberating approach to photography, because it's the most accessible, the most democratic form of art, period, I believe. Because now everybody has a camera in their pocket at all times of the day, right? Anybody can make pictures, and I think that this is great. There isn't this barrier to entry to practice street photography. You know, I believe the new iPhone just came out. I'm sure it takes great photos. You know, there's not really any limitations now when it comes to acquiring gear or the technicalities of photography, as now the camera does all the work for us, which is great. Right? It's never been easier to get into photography, and I believe that the fact that everyone can go out there and practice street photography, the democratization of the medium itself, is what makes it so valuable, because we all understand this sort of language of images and this immediacy of a photograph that can potentially resonate with a viewer on a deeper level than the visual. And I think that as street photographers, we may get caught up in this sort of visual game of photography where we think about the foreground and the background and how to relate things, and we know that a composition is stronger when you position yourself in this particular way, and you know, these things do become a part of our toolkit, and we try to make these photographs that sing visually. However, what if we let go of these limiting compositional visual tools that we use as street photographers, and we let go and we embrace this more emotional response to life itself, where we're photographing not from our vision or our eyes, but through our gut and our heart, you know, our instincts, our intuition. You know, this is what guides the street photographer, right? And when you consider the visual game of street photography, perhaps to simply let go, right? To snapshot your way through life, just letting life flow towards you. And then you're there and you're prepared and you're making photographs and you always have a camera on you, but you're not trying to alter life or construct life. And I think actually letting the chips just sort of fall as they may through this new approach of snapshotting, where you're not necessarily trying to construct a photograph, but just realizing it when you're in the moment and trying to remain as loose and spontaneous as possible, as ultimately I believe this to be the ethos of street photography. It's the spontaneous nature of life. It's about photographing life as it is. And I think that to go forward with in this realm of street photography, perhaps it is most wise for us to embrace that ethos, to embrace spontaneity, to embrace chance, right? To embrace this approach loosely and spontaneously by photographing through your heart, not necessarily your eyes, right? I think that the visual side of photography is something that you can actually forget about. I think that once you learn the visual game and understand how to construct great photographs, you know, this is a great goal. Like, go out there and learn that. I think that we should all learn that first and foremost. But to push the boundaries, for myself, moving onward and moving forward after a decade of practice now, I need to play the game in a new way, right? I need to sort of bend the rules. I need to try new things and tinker more and experiment more. And I think that when you become great at composition, or you master the fundamentals of photography generally, that's where you can simply hit a wall, right? That's where you can then maybe become burnt out, or, you know, there is this idea of remaining an amateur forever that I'm very fond of, where the more I go out there and photograph each day, the more curious I'm actually becoming. And I'm realizing over the past 2 years specifically, since transitioning to photographing in black and white, is that I can really hone in on the process by letting go of the outcome, and the photographs just merely become a byproduct of my lust for life itself. And the photograph isn't necessarily this visual thing, right? The photograph is a result of the photographer positioning themselves on the front lines of life, engaged with life itself. It's a reflection of your courage, of your heart, right? A photograph requires you, the photographer, to go out there into the world. And the closer you become to life itself, the more your photographs will resonate deeply with the viewer. And I believe that this ultimately is perhaps the goal, is to create photographs that evoke an emotional response, not necessarily something visual. You know, the visual thing, you know, I think that happens sort of intuitively, but the emotional response, the emotional resonance that the photograph leaves on a viewer, that sort of universal language of photography, the interpretation of life as it is, perhaps is the ultimate ethos of street photography. And yeah, I just wanted to share some random thoughts about it. Just chilling in the morning. GoPro Mini, 720p, 30 FPS, super view. Yeah, I think also yeah, at this point with cameras and technology, we have so many megapixels, and we have like the full frame blah blahs and like all the fancy equipment. But yeah, I like shooting these videos at 720p. You know, who needs the like high quality shit? And also with my camera, right, I set it, my Ricoh, I've been setting it into the small JPEG file, embracing the grit, embracing the grain, embracing man, I wonder if I can get the headlights here too. Yeah, embracing the sort of small JPEG file specifically. And yeah, I actually believe that it's aesthetically beautiful. I have to come back here and try this. Gotta go though. That could be cool. Yeah, something about the cars and like the motion and the like the motion blur, like, and the way the lights move. I'm gonna figure something out with this. I'm gonna figure out how to photograph in this freaking time of day, because I'm out way too early for my own good. I feel like I'm Eugene Atget in Paris. I feel like Atget. Yeah, we gotta go to the source. Gotta go to the source.